Perfect. Gabe Globe is a seasoned learning and development leader. He is a product coach and entrepreneur with over 20 years of experience driving business impact through strategic learning initiatives. And today, Gabe will introduce to us some important business canvas that will help us to think like a strategic partners and make a bigger impact in our daily business life. So Gabe, the floor is yours.
All right. Thank you, Valeria. Thank you for organizing this and having me on here. I have been a member of the L&D Shakers for, I don't know, probably a year and a half, 2 years now. It has to be hands down the best L&D community that I've been a part of. I'm in New York City. I've joined the New York City chapter and gone to many events there. They always do a great job. I get so much value out of Slack and everyone else. So I'm just delighted to be able to offer a few things back. The title of this is How to Speak Business. Before I get going, just let me know that you're alive by giving me a reaction. Go to the react button down there and give me like a thumbs up or a ta-da or something. All right. I'm seeing a few things come through. Fantastic. Thank you. If you like what you're hearing, or you're confused about what you're hearing, or you disagree with what you're hearing throughout this, feel free to hit me with some reactions to keep me on track. But let me go ahead and share my slides. And I am going to talk about the relationship between thinking and speaking business and becoming a trusted learning advisor. And the first question I always, kind of ask is like, why are we here in the first place? Why is speaking business at all useful to us? And if you've spent any time in L&D chat rooms or listening to L&D podcasts, you've probably heard a lot of things like, I would love to stop being an order taker and become more of a trusted advisor or a consultant, or I really want to have a real impact on the business. And I'm struggling to, demonstrate that. Or of course, the war horse we've all heard, it's time for L&D to get a seat at the table. Well, it's hard to get a seat at the table if you don't speak the language that's being spoken at the table. And that is by and large the language of business. One of the harsh truths that I had to really come to terms with is that mostly no one cares about my learning. They care about what my learning can do for them. So I discovered a tool through my career when I had spent time working with product teams and coaching, doing innovation coaching with product portfolio groups, called the Business Model Canvas. And this is essentially a simple single-page tool that maps out how a business works. And I have gotten so much mileage out of this tool in my career from a learning and development standpoint. Probably more than anything, this has catapulted me from the training guy to a trusted learning advisor faster than any other approach. So what I'm going to do today is I'm going to walk you through how this works, and it's going to give you the language and the structure and the flow for how to understand how your business makes money, how to understand how your clients operate and think and what matters to them from a business perspective, and ultimately how to align, tie, and articulate your learning programs to bottom line business impact. Now, I'm going to go through, there's going to be a lot of information that kind of comes at you quick. Do not feel like you have to grasp it all. Let it just sort of wash over you. What I'm really trying to do is get you to see the sort of gestalt of it all, the flow of this. And you'll get a handout before we go into a breakout room where you'll get to meet other people and take this for a test drive. And that will have everything that you need to kind of study it a bit more deeply after that. Okay, so to start with, I want to pick a company and map it out for you on the business model canvas, so you see how we use it to figure out a company. I'm going to do Figma. If you're familiar with Figma, give me a thumbs up in the chat. But Figma is a great company based here in New York, and that's where we go for our shaker events at L&D. So I thought I would map them out. So here's how Figma works. So in the center, we have value propositions. Now, Figma as a company solves a problem, and that is they help design and development teams build great products together. And the people that they help, the people that have that problem, are software companies, right? So building software used to be a kind of complicated, it's still complicated, but it was a complex and clumsy process with a bunch of people and too many different chat rooms and too many different tools. And so Figma came along and streamlined that whole thing. So in the center, that's what we do, is we put the value proposition. That's the problem they're solving. And the customer segments are the people that they're solving it for. Now let's drill just a little bit deeper here. Within Figma, who are we, within the software companies, who are we really talking about here? We're talking about designers, developers, and product managers. Those are the personas, the types of people that have this problem. And within the value proposition, what are we really selling? We're actually selling products. In this case, Figma Design, which is the main platform, and then FigJam, Figma Slides, and what they call Dev Mode. This is what Figma would call their core product portfolio. Right? So we always start with these two, the value propositions and the customer segments. Who has a problem and how are we solving that problem for them? Okay. Now, let's talk about channels. Channels are, how does the value get to the customer? Well, through the Figma platform. That's the primary channel through which the customers solve their problem. But they also reach customers through their marketing websites, through their sales team, through their support site. And they have a bunch of communities, like L&D has, the Shakers have chapters in New York and LA and Miami and London and Amsterdam and all that. Figma also has communities that happen locally. And so these are the ways that the customers interact with Figma and get value out of the company. That's what channels are about. Customer relationships have a lot of different flavors. Figma is by and large a SaaS platform. So it's sort of self-service. You never really talk to somebody unless there's a problem. You go online, you fill out your credit card, you start using it. Enterprise buyers, if they're selling to a big company, they have a much deeper personal relationship. You're getting to know these people to ensure their business year after year. And then there's also a sort of community relationship with those different communities that I had mentioned across the world. So there's a few different kinds of customer relationships that we want to think about. Now, how does Figma make money? Well, it's a SaaS product. So they sell user licenses, or what they call seats, and that costs a certain amount of money per seat per month. Very common pricing model for generating revenue. Those seats come in different tiers. They've got a free tier, a pro tier, a business tier, an enterprise tier. They cost different amounts of money. And then there's another product called FigJam, which they sell for a smaller amount, $5 a month or something like that. But that's how they generate revenue. This, of course, is critical for us to know as L&D people. We got to know how our companies make money. Otherwise, we can't help them make more money through our efforts. Now, let's go to the left side here. What are the resources that Figma needs in order to deliver this value? Well, you've got to have a platform. You need the Figma platform. That's like the main resource of the company, is the product itself. You also need to have a brand. There's like a bazillion SaaS companies out there. You've got to find a way to stand out and differentiate. So that's really important. And then user groups are another very important key resource. Of course, there's lots of stuff that goes into making a business work, but these are the most essential and unique aspects for Figma. Now, key activities. What do we have to do day in, day out, week in, week out to make the business run? Well, you got to build and maintain the product. That's just a massive amount of activity. You go to their offices and it's designers and developers as far as the eye can see. You also have to do marketing and sales. You got to tell people about the product. You got to organize those communities. You got to talk to enterprise customers. And then there's customer education and support. Figma is a big, complex product. People need to learn how to use it. People are going to have problems using it, and they need those problems fixed. Those are probably the big core key activities that make this business work. And then partnerships. Not everything that makes the business work is within Figma. So another key part of their business are affiliates. These are people that run podcasts or newsletters and have an audience that they can talk to, and they can help promote Figma as well. Those are important partnerships to maintain. And so are the communities themselves. These are much like the L&D Shakers, sort of volunteer-driven, passionate people that are enthusiastic about it. So you want to maintain and support those partnerships. And then lastly, what does it cost to make this business work? I think of cost structure as sort of like a spreadsheet of the budget, right? And if I sorted it by the biggest costs, what are the most important line items in that budget? Well, product and engineering, it's just a massive cost for this company. Marketing is another really important cost. You might put sales into that bucket. And then community support, whether that's through customer service or those friends of Figma and stuff like that. There's other cost structures, but you want to find the biggest, most important ones. So there in it, like under 10 minutes, we've just mapped out the entire business model of Figma. Now, I haven't checked the chat. I don't know if there's any questions popping up or urgent issues, but that's how quickly it can go to really illustrate how a company works. And every one of these sort of post-it notes is an aspect of the company that you can help improve as an L&D professional. That's where you can point your quiver of arrows to say, here's how I'm helping the company bring in more revenue, reduce costs, operate more efficiently, be more innovative. So I'll just start there. Valeria, do we have any really important big questions coming in right now, or should I go on to the next one?
No, we don't have any questions, so you can go ahead.
Okay, great. I want to quickly show you some important patterns of what you just saw. And this will help you remember the business model canvas and the order in which I typically go through it. So these areas up on the right, these are sort of the market, the external to the customer areas. Sorry, external to the company areas, right? I tend to think of this as desirability. Are we solving a real problem that people actually have? Do they want that problem solved? Over on the left is feasibility. This is internal, inside the company. How do we solve that problem? What does it take to do that? The resources, the activities, the partnerships. How does the business work? And then on the bottom is viability or sustainability, right? If we build this business and it's just free for everybody and we just keep paying the bills, we're going to go broke pretty soon. And then nobody gets their problem solved. So how do we balance the revenues and the costs to make the business sustainable? Those are three powerful categories within which to start thinking about a company, right? What problem are we solving? How do we solve it? And how do we make that solving of it sustainable? Now, I'm going to show you one more. You can take this structure, you can take this concept, and you can zoom in on a single department, which is to say, a client for you, because that's typically how we think of our clients is, oh, the sales departments come to me and they want some training, or the customer support department needs some training, right? And so this is how I think of and map out the clients within the organizations that I'm working with. And if you do this right, this is what's going to launch you up into trusted advisor status faster than anything else. Because once you get comfortable with this, you will find you're describing their department better than they can themselves. Like 4 times out of 5, that's what people tell me after I've said, here's what I understand about your department. Let me know if I've got anything wrong. Okay. So I'm going to map out the customer support department for Figma in 5 minutes or less. Here we go. So who does the customer support department support? Customers, right? The designers, the developers, the product managers. But they have internal customers as well. So the chief operating officer down there in blue, that's probably where the customer support department sits. So keeping her happy, that's a big deal. That's an important customer. The product team is also a customer who's consuming the output of the customer support department. Now, what do? what's their value proposition, right? The customer support department helps you get your questions answered and your problem solved. If you can't use Figma for whatever reason, get in touch and we'll sort it out for you. That's the value prop. But they also have value props internally. So for the COO, it's ticket resolution and happy customers. That's what we deliver for them. And then for the product teams, it's bug reports and a better product. I'm simplifying things a little bit, but that's what the product team wants from customer support. Now, what are the channels that they use to deliver this? Answer those questions and solve those problems. Well, they have a support site. They have email, phone, chat. These are the ways that customers interact with the customer support department. But the ticket resolutions, the bug reports, those are delivered through meetings and through regular, probably monthly or quarterly reports. So that's an important channel for this team as well. Now, what kind of relationships do they have with the customers, which is in yellow, if you figured that out? It's a transactional personal relationship. They're interacting one-to-one with someone. They know their name. They're solving their problem. But once it's solved, that's kind of it. Nobody's remembering their birthday or calling them for their kid's bar mitzvah or anything like that. The blue stuff, the internal customers, however, that's very high touch and personal. You're working with those people on a regular basis. So you really want to have a quality relationship that you maintain over time. Now, revenue gets a little weird because the customer support department isn't really directly charging people to ask questions. They're not charging the product team for their bug reports, but there is still an exchange of value. Now, maybe the customer support department has higher levels of service for different tiers of membership, right? And so if they're delivering great customer support that's pushing people into those higher tiers, then they could maybe justify that, you know, they're a revenue generating part of the company. But another way to think of revenue in a departmental sense is, what's the cost to the customer? And whenever the customer calls customer support, they're spending time. And so they can think of it as minutes per ticket. And if that cost gets too high, if I'm spending too many minutes to get my problem solved, then I may start searching elsewhere. So that's one way to think of the sort of revenues or costs. But then internally, you know, your revenue for a department is your budget. How much money are you getting every year to spend on your department? Well, that depends on hitting your KPIs. So those are some of the ways that I think of revenue internally. Now, how does the customer support department work? Well, you got to have customer support reps. You got to have comm systems, ticketing systems, a knowledge base. These are all the things that you're going to be grappling with as an L&D person trying to support them. Ticketing systems are also important internally because that's what's producing the reports on ticket resolution and bug reports. Key activities. What are we doing all the time? We're resolving tickets day in and day out. That's what they do. But we're also doing KPI reporting. We're also generating bug reports. We're also doing product training because the product is always growing and evolving. Partnerships. Well, the customer support department probably has a tight relationship with all the communities around, those friends of Figma. But then internally, your product team and your IT team are really important partners for you to effectively do your job, because the product team is going to train you on the product, and the IT team is going to help you with your comm systems, your knowledge base, that sort of thing. And then lastly, what are the costs for the customer support department? Well, you got to have support reps. That's headcount, right? Salary. These are the things that the head of customer support is thinking about all the time, right? Ticketing and comm systems, those cost money. They probably cost time in terms of training and usage as well. And then knowledge management and product training, those are costs as well. Those are kind of the big cost areas. So again, when you're working with a client, you want to have this structure in your head as you're thinking about the dynamics of, you know, how they operate, where you can help solve some of their problems. When they come to you and say, I need a training on X, you can start to break that down and say, well, why? What aspect of your department? Is it in the key resources? Is it in the customer relationships, right? That's going to be affected by this. So that's a very quick tour of the business model canvas through two lenses, at the company level and at the department level. We're going to have a breakout session now where you're going to take all of this for a test drive. Valeria, do you want me to walk through the instructions? There's anything you want to say before I do that?
Yeah, just mention that we're gonna have 20 minutes for the breakout room, and it will be relatively small, 4 people, 3-4 people per room.
Good. Okay. So you're going to get a handout like this into the chat in just a second. This is the business model canvas. And this is the good stuff. This is like the teaser that I use to get people to sign up for things, but you're getting it for free. This has all the consulting questions that I use when I work with a client to understand how their business operates or how their department operates. So this is going to be your guide in the next section. So here are the instructions. We're going to do a role play, okay? This is going to be a client discovery meeting. So you're going to practice being the trusted learning advisor using the business model canvas. And one of you in the breakout room will be the client, okay? So whoever that is, just pick a client that you're working with now, someone that you're familiar with, the sales department, the marketing team, product, whatever. If you can't think of one, just be the head of the customer service department, like I had just talked about, right? And the idea is you need some training, right? And you're meeting with the L&D team for the first time. The rest of you will be the L&D team. And your job is to understand how the department functions so that you have the right context to help them think through the training problem, okay? You're going to use that business model canvas as your consulting guide. You'll see questions like I just showed you in each of those boxes. Go through it in, maybe roughly the same order that I did, work from right to left. And just remember to keep it moving. We're going to give you 15 to 20 minutes, I think. You don't need to have a profound understanding of this department, just a high-level overview of the different parts and how they work together. That's the key thing so that you can start thinking about where can I and how can I support them with learning, okay? You don't have to get through the whole thing. That's okay if you don't get through it. The point of this exercise is just to take it for a test drive and see how it feels to guide a conversation. Remember to have some fun and get to know the other people in the breakout room. No one's getting graded on this exercise. So with that, Valeria, I will leave it to you to send folks into the breakout rooms.
Maybe before we leave, if there are any questions, then it's a good moment to quickly check. Okay, then I consider this silence as everything clear, and I invite you to the breakout rooms. You should receive the invitation in your screen. Have fun.
All right.
1 second. Welcome back. Nice to see you back. It's nice that you're smiling. So it means that the breakout rooms worked quite well.
I hope so. We're going to do a Q&A right now. I'm anxious to hear what came up in those conversations, what burning questions you still have. Before we do that really quick, one of the things I didn't get to, because we just don't have time, is you can actually take the business model canvas and apply it to yourself as an L&D team. And that's what I did the last time I was running L&D for a 3,000 person organization. And it was a total game changer in terms of how we think about our customers, how we think about our programs, how we deliver and package our offerings. It was just an incredibly innovative way to rethink L&D. So if that's something you want to know more about, just connect with me on LinkedIn. I think I might be literally the only Gabe Gloga on LinkedIn. So just search for my name. That's what you'll see when it shows up, Gloege. Just connect with me, send me a DM like, hey, tell me about the L&D stuff, and we can take it from there. But beyond that, what questions do you have? Either pop them into the chat or unmute yourself, and Valeria and I will address them.
we have a first question, Gabe, from Pamela.
Yes, hi. So I don't know if this is a question, more of a reflection or an observation I had while doing the exercise. So I was trying to run, we were trying to run through the canvas, and I noticed that we were also asking questions as discovery, you know, to understand needs, training needs. So I was seeing a shift from trying to understand what learners need and stepping back again and trying to understand the business. And you know, I was a bit torn between those two, but then at the end I understood maybe, you know, it's okay to do those two things at the same time, more or less, to understand how learners engaged in that organization. But I wanted to know more about your experience while you run this exercise.
Yeah.
How it goes in this sense.
Great question. I think of it in two phases. You know, if I've just joined an organization or just started an engagement, before I meet with a client for a discovery meeting, I'll build a little business model canvas of their department myself, just based on what I know. And if I don't know the answer, I'll make it up. I'll take my best guess, right? And that gives me an opportunity for like a power move in the meeting, is to start out. And again, this is great for first time meetings. Say, hey, we don't know each other really yet. I'm really looking forward to getting to understand your business. Why don't I just give you my like 2-minute, you know, spiel on what I think your business does, and you let me know where I'm wrong or misunderstanding it. And they're like, all right, go ahead. This should be interesting. And then I do it. I walk through it in, you know, like 5 minutes or so. And usually that's when they say like, wow, that's probably better than I could have explained it. And it's not to say that I'm like a genius or something. It's that oftentimes they're so deep in the weeds with their business, they understand all the nuances. It's very hard for them to simplify it, right? It's uncomfortable for them to simplify it. So that's what I do to start with. And then that kind of gets it out of the way. And then we can do the sort of learning-based discovery. Tell me about the problem. Why is that an issue? Oh, that sounds like it's affecting your, you know, kind of key resources over here, that sort of thing. If I don't have the chance to do that, then yeah, I do what you just described. You know, I'm kind of exploring and asking some questions as they're telling me, you know, their issues. And I'll say, now it sounds like it has to do with these customers over here. Is that the only customer segment you have, or is there another additional one that's really important? Or, so it just kind of flows organically. You just have to do it a number of times and get really comfortable with the canvas. And then you can almost kind of see it in your head as you're sort of filling it out, you know, mentally during the meeting. I hope that helps. What else? But any reactions or just feedback you have as well? It doesn't have to be a question, but what's on your mind right now?
I have a question. For those who are not used to use this business Canva in the daily life, how would you recommend where to start?
It's a good question. I would probably start kind of how I had just suggested. So the first thing I think everyone should do after leaving this, my humble recommendation, would be build one for your own company. You know, understand how your business makes money. And it's not the kind of thing where you're going to build it once the first time and it's perfect and you'll never change it again. That's the whole point of a canvas, right? Is that it's fast, it's fluid, it allows you to rethink things, move things around, but build it for your own company. And then maybe find somebody at your company that you think understands the business pretty well, whether that's a client that you have a good relationship with, or maybe it's, you know, your own manager, or somebody from sales that, you know, has a savvy, and run it by them and say, hey, I did this little exercise. This is how I think the company works. What do you think? And that'll give you some great feedback, you know, because there's probably things that they see that you can't see as far as how the business works. But, you know, to speak plainly, like that also starts to help with your own kind of reputation. Like, oh, wow, Pamela came and like described this business really well to me. I had no idea she was kind of thinking at that level. You know, do that a few more times. Like, I'm trying to get some feedback. I'm trying to understand things better. And not only do you, you know, signal that you understand the business better than most people probably thought you did, but that you're curious and hungry to learn more. And I think that can only be good for you. And then after that, I would say, like I just mentioned to Pamela, if you have a client discovery meeting coming up, try and map one of these out really quick for them before you go into it.
Oh, thanks, Gabe.
What else? Yeah, sure. What else? We have a few minutes still.
We have a comment from Katya who says that their group had the same with Pamela. They kept being drawn to the typical L&D questions too.
Katya, tell me, what are some of those typical L&D questions?
So I was in a group with Grace and Zod, and Grace and I were the question askers, and Zod was amazing at answering them. We were more so asking, like, what are the typical needs, like their roadblocks, what's the ideal outcome, what's the ideal scenario, you know, like more of the coaching-esque L&D philosophy versus like business, because it feels very foreign, and I see the value in it. So we are, and Grace, please feel free to jump in. But I felt like my personal point of friction was like, okay, we have these questions, they don't quite fit in the situation, and can we talk more human, right, versus more business?
Right.
I don't know
right.
anybody else, but curious how to address that, Gabe.
Yeah, I think, you know, one of the two most powerful questions in a discovery meeting for me are why and how. Right. And they kind of move you up or down the abstraction ladder, if you will. And so, you know, if we start with sort of learning needs, or, you know, here's the training that I want. Okay. Sounds interesting. I can see why you'd want that. Tell me a little bit more about it. Why? Like, what aspect of your department do you think this is going to affect? And they're going to start leaking out kind of business model information for you, which you can then latch on to. You know, so if it's customer support really needs, you know, training on how to write business emails. Oh, why is that? What's going on? Oh, they're, you know, it's a customer relationship issue. They don't have the right understanding of the customer relationship. Oh, okay. And what are the channels that that's typically going out? Is this really just email, or is it also kind of through chat, or through some sort of automated thing? And they're going to start leaking out key resources. Oh, it's your ticketing system. Tell me more about the ticketing system. How does that work? And how often are they using that ticketing system? Now we're talking about key activities, right? And is the ticketing system just used by them, or do you have affiliate partners that are using it? So you kind of latch on to whatever the problem is they're describing and use that to peel back other layers and aspects of the business model. Did that make sense?
It does. I kind of view it as an orange, right? You're peeling the layers, and you've got the why, the how, but each segment is a segment of this this map, basically.
Yeah, that's a great visual. I'm going to use that. And it is a very fluid, kind of to Pamela's point earlier, like it's just sort of a fluid thing that you have to learn how to surf on top of. You can't really show up and be like, all right, so the first set of questions are about your customer segments. Tell me who consumes the output of your, you know, they're going to quickly be like, okay, this guy's just reading a form here. So you have to get a little comfortable with it, but that's how it moves for sure.
Thank you. That's very helpful.
Yeah.
We have one more question from Pamela and Sad. Sad, I will give this time the word to you, okay? And if we have still time, we will get back to Pamela.
Oh, no, I'm fine for Pamela to go first if she wants. Okay, cool. All right, well, thank you for that. In our group, we were talking about which position to start from on the canvas. It was a really simple but interesting question. And we went with the customer segments. We just so happened to fit in with the department that I was role playing was sales. And so it did fit in really well. And I just wondered if you had any suggestions for where you might start if you were to ask questions, and should it be tailored to the department you're speaking to, and how much. So I saw this as canvas as a really great way of getting a holistic picture of the total view of the business, like the sum of its parts, if you like, and how everything connects together. How what's the next level down? You know, if you were speaking to the engineering team, for example, you know, have you found that you've had to get a bit more like into it, a bit more granular, like beyond these? Is there a next level of questions, basically?
Yeah, yeah. Well, so I'll respond to both of those questions. The first is that I tend to always start or move as quickly as I can toward the value proposition and the customer segment, because that's the essence of the business, right? Until you know those things, none of the other stuff makes sense, right? Well, we need a knowledge management platform. Well, why? Why do you need? Well, because we solve we answer questions for customers, right? So, and sometimes I'll get there quickly by like my first response is sometimes, hey, at the risk of stating the obvious here, but just to make sure I understand you guys, my understanding is that you solve this problem for these kinds of people. Is that like the bulk of what you guys do, or is there something else that I'm missing? You know, and they like that. They tend to love hearing their own business function reflected back to them, right? And so they'll get into that kind of a question quickly. And that's when I talk about meaningful conversations that are sort of advisory in their nature. That's the kind of conversation that they want to have. The second question is, yes, I think it is kind of fractal in that you can always zoom in, you know, so if we started the company, then we can zoom into a department, then we could zoom into a team, and then you could even probably zoom into an individual person. And the way I think about that is every team and even every person, every role has sort of inputs and outputs. You're a transformer. You give me something, I do something to it, and then I send it out to someone else, right? So like marketing takes attention and turns it into leads for the sales team. Sales team takes leads and turns it into signed contracts, right? Customer support teams, they take struggling customers and questions and turn it into solved problems and closed tickets. You know, you can think of every team and even every person. A learning designer, right, takes learning needs and turns them into assets and resources and content. And so when you're doing that, you're going to have most of these components, right? You do those through certain channels. You have a certain kind of a relationship with the person that's giving you the outputs, or the person you're providing the inputs, or strike that, reverse it, right? You've got resources, you've got activities you're doing on a regular basis. All that stuff kind of comes along for the ride. And that's why I've used this for L&D teams. That has been a real kind of game changer for us, because it just changes how it helps break us out of the sort of standard L&D structure that I think we're often used to. I hope that helps out. Yeah. And Pamela, did that answer your question? Your hand's not up anymore, so I don't know if you still have a question or not.
I don't want to take any more time. I know we are on time, so I'm just gonna pass it. Thanks,
Right.
Gabe.
Sure. Well, I'll pass it to Valeria to wrap it up, but thank you, everybody. This was great. I hope you found some value in it.
Thanks, Gabe, and thanks everyone who stayed. You are heroes, and you have a potential for the learning advisor, and you have already some work to do. So, guys, ladies, enjoy the rest of your day, and you have some homework.
All right. Hope to see you all on LinkedIn. Take care.
Bye.
Thank you.